All right. Are we ready?
No time like the present. Break a
All
leg.
Right. Yours or mine? All right. Let me do this.
We just want to welcome everyone to today's town hall for the Access and Parking Management Plan update. And thank you for joining today. We'll start in a few minutes, but we want to remind everyone that we're recording tonight's town hall and that the recording will be available on the city's website. Okay. All right, let's get started. So I want to welcome everyone this evening to the town hall. We're here to update the Access and Parking Management Plan. I'm Chrissy Mancini Nichols. I'm with Walker Consultants, and Walker is leading the consulting team that is working with the city in partnership to update the plan. A little bit of background on Walker: we're a parking and mobility consulting firm with offices across the country, but 3 in California. And I'm joined by my colleagues, Tanya Schleck, Ellen Schwartz, Ben Weber, and Jonathan Wicks from Walker. And we're all working closely with the city as a partner, like I said. Just want to note that we may be consultants, but we all have lots of connections to San Luis Obispo and friends in San Luis Obispo. I visit often, and I walk and bike and drive and park too, and in and around downtown. We've all had the opportunity to meet with community members in person earlier this month, and we're excited to bring the community together tonight at this town hall to hear your input and get your feedback on parking and access to and around downtown so that we can create a plan that works for you. So to start, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Ben, who will get us going, get us warmed up, and provide some background on the planning process. So Ben, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Chrissy. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Well, again, my name is Ben Weber. I'm pleased to join you tonight. I want to first start with a little bit of nuts and bolts on methods that you all will be using to participate with us over the next couple hours. We're going to use a platform called Mentimeter, which some of you may be familiar with. And what we're going to do tonight is sort of variously have us on the project team giving some presentations, but then we're also going to have questions, quick straw polls and surveys kind of scattered throughout. And we're going to use Mentimeter for you all to provide answers in real time, and those results are going to pop up on screen really as we go along. So it's a great way for us to get a sense of who you are and some of your thoughts about access and parking management in SLO along the way. It gives us a little bit of idea of what we're responding to and what some of your major topics and areas of interest are. So this is when we get started. I will ask all of you to hop into a web browser window, go to menti.com. That's MENTI.com. And then it will ask you for a code. And that code is on the top here, 6914732. You don't have to worry about spaces. You can just type in those digits. So I'm going to give everyone 15 or 20 seconds to get going on that. If you're having any problems getting into Mentimeter, raise your hand or put something in the chat here and we can try to talk you through it. All right, we'll get going in about 10 seconds here. I can't see the participant list. Someone from Walker City, how many folks do we have with us right now?
We have 26.
26, all right, excellent. Okay, I'm going to trust that most folks are in Menti. I'm getting heart symbols. This is great. This is very encouraging. Okay. And let's dive right into a few questions here. So your Menti screen should be following along, and you should be on question number 1 at this point. Everyone can start putting responses in. Here we go. We're seeing answers filter in. So you got this question about how you most frequently travel to downtown. Just want to get a sense of how you move about. Give us about 8 more seconds here. Okay, well, so we're getting a decent spread here. Some people driving personal vehicles, a couple transit users, some drop-offs, some folks who walk. So I'm glad to have you all here with your different perspectives on traveling around downtown SLO. That will be very handy for us tonight and the coming months of the project as we think about all the different multimodal kind of options that we're exploring. Let's keep marching on here. Question number 2, what are all the reasons you travel to downtown SLO? And you should be able to pick multiple options here. If I did my job and set this up properly. Oh, all right. Well, looks like I shot myself in the foot there. One option, but I hope you're all picking, I guess, your primary reason here. Okay, a lot of downtown employees, dining and retail. One other thing I want to point out on Mentimeter is if you didn't answer the previous question, it won't automatically move you along. So you'll probably see a little pop-up on your Menti screen that says the presenter has changed slides. And you can click the blue button that says go to slide. Okay, so we've got a good cross-section of folks here. Downtown employees, I imagine you're coming to downtown most days out of the week, are pretty familiar with your own travel habits, and you see a lot of different commuting patterns and customer travel habits throughout the course of the day. So we'll want to get into some of your observations and experiences there. Folks coming for dining and retail, the options across many blocks in downtown, parks, recreation, and events. So those are, maybe sometimes special encounters, whether it's the Thursday night farmers market, which is a big draw, or anything else going on culturally in SLO. Okay, let's keep going here. Okay, this is an open-ended question, and if you don't have anything to add at this point, but what other reasons do you come downtown? This might be a secondary draw that brings you down. If you're an employee, you might come down on your free time sometimes. Seen some answers come up here. So type in kind of whatever feels right. Great, awesome. We've got meeting friends, the museum, entertainment. Oh my goodness, this screen's going berserk. Okay. This is good. All right, kid-friendly surroundings. All right. Excellent, excellent. Well, we have a small enough group here that I think we can negotiate a little bit of conversation along the way. So if anyone, as we're going through these questions, has something you want to speak aloud to elaborate on, please raise your hand and we'll be able to see that in Zoom. This is a virtual raising of your hand that you do through the Zoom controls. And I'm going to count on my colleagues to keep an eye on the participation list for that. Are there any hands raised out there, Walker or city folks? Okay.
Not at this time, Ben.
Not at this time. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jonathan. All right. Well, I'm really encouraged by the mix of reasons that you all find downtown an appealing place to visit. And we'll be diving into this a little bit more as we get into discussion groups and talking about access and parking strategies. All right. A simple yes or no question here. Do you live in one of the residential permit districts? If you do, you probably know it. And if not, you probably do too. So. These are little areas that are designated. They're mostly north of downtown, where there's some permit restrictions for on-street parking in those neighborhoods. We'll talk a little bit more later in this presentation about kind of the relevance of these districts. All right. Then an open-ended question here. What brief thoughts come to mind when you think about access to and parking in downtown SLO? Give us some free association here. We want to keep track of what you put in Mentimeter as a comment right now, and we'll try to focus on some of the topics that get a lot of attention throughout the rest of tonight. So it could be about ease or convenience, expense, locations, any number of other things. Okay, so we're seeing some results here that access and parking can be expensive, frustrating, maybe a little bit complicated, bad transit options, confusing signage. So you're definitely identifying some of the same topics and concerns that we've heard through an online survey that's active right now and some of the stakeholder meetings that we've conducted over the last few weeks. And these are some of the major challenges that we want to try to address through this access and parking management plan update. So it's good to know that this all resonates with you and that these are some of the key areas and issues that we should be focusing on. Okay, we'll leave this open for about 5 more seconds here for final thoughts. Again, if anything comes back to mind for you later on, feel free to put it in the Zoom chat. There's also the online survey that's active right now. We will be taking all of this input, kind of aggregating it together into the official record. So you have a couple different channels to participate through. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for that warm-up activity. I hope Mentimeter is working well for you. Now, we want to give you a little more information on what tonight's all about. So we are somewhat early in the process of the access and parking management plan. We'll spend some time describing the purpose and the process of this project, which is going to go into early 2023. We'll give a little bit of information about our investigation. That includes some really detailed fact-finding and parking occupancy counts. And it also includes some of the community input we've been doing the last few months. That includes those stakeholder meetings, the survey, and of course, tonight, being central to that. Tonight's also kind of this inflection point from fact finding and observation into beginning to discuss strategies and tactics for parking and access. And so this meeting will kind of bridge between both of those. The second half of the meeting, we'll get into a discussion about ideas and strategies and your thoughts and opinions about some of those at the high level. We plan to wrap up at about 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. And then we all, will stay here on the Zoom call for another 30 minutes to 8 p.m. just for any remaining informal discussion. And that's going to stay recorded too. So there's a couple opportunities to weigh in. So just looking at the timeline here, as I mentioned, we started roughly July with some of our parking use counts. And then over the past month or so, I've conducted the community survey, stakeholder interviews, on-site observations. And then over the next few months, as we get towards the planned conclusion of this update in February, there will be other avenues through which you all community members are invited to participate. That includes attending, sitting in on the Active Transportation Committee in November, City Council workshop, date TBD, but sometime probably November or early December. Planning Commission in December, City Council in February. So there's a number of other benchmarks that you'll be able to weigh in on. And we'll make sure to use the city's website, social media, and other advertising platforms to make sure you know those exact dates and exactly how to participate. So I want to hand it off to Gavin, the city of San Luis Obispo, to give a little bit of background on why this project and why now. Take it away, Gavin.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Ben. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, my name is Gavin Hussey. I'm the parking program manager. And first, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. We greatly appreciate the feedback you're going to provide to us, not only through this virtual meeting tonight, but through the survey if you're able to take that. Our goal through this process is to identify a more sustainable future for our community. We hope to identify the needs regarding access and mobility and how parking plays a role in those needs. And I want to stress that our time working as a community to reimagine parking and where and when possible to provide strategies and access for curb management and parking that supports the values and needs of our community. So a little bit of parking, I'm going to give a little bit of backstory here, and so people have some understanding and context. So parking is an enterprise fund, and like water, sewer, and transit, we're a self-support program for the city. What exactly that means is that we don't receive any tax revenue or support from the general fund. All the revenue that we generate through on and off street fees and citations goes directly back into parking specific programs and operations like the Cultural Arts District parking structure and maintenance and repair of existing infrastructure. So that includes safety and infrastructure improvements, as well as equipment improvements and paving. Like the paving project you're seeing in the downtown core right now, parking is responsible for the fees associated with the paving directly underneath all paid parking spaces. We're also working on the Cultural Arts District parking structure. That is a long planned project for the city. We expect the pre-construction utility work to begin this November. And then that'll last through January of 23. We're doing site prep and demo for the building this coming spring of 23, with vertical construction on the project beginning next summer, next fall of 23. And our anticipated opening of that parking structure will be winter of 25, 26. We're also continuing our efforts for on-street and off-street parking expansions of credit card capable meters and multi-space pay stations. This has been a project that was developed at the beginning of the pandemic to help widen our sidewalks and open spaces. And we're going to be continuing projects like our gateless parking option for the parking structures, where customers will have ease of access into and out of the parking structures without having to deal with equipment. We've made these adjustments. We've also made adjustments to the preferential parking districts So our permitted parking areas to allow commercial businesses to participate in parking districts and form their own parking districts. And then some people-friendly projects that we have going on around town. Like I mentioned, we are doing the paving project right now, which also includes expansions to bike infrastructure and protected bike lanes in and around the downtown. We've seen expansions to the bike program across the whole community. You'll see some going on right now on Marsh between Napomo and Santa Rosa. Additionally, we've expanded and reestablished some transit services. The routes that have been reestablished are the 1B, 2B, and the Laguna Tripper routes. We've also have our first electric buses showing up this coming December. And we have secured funding for 6 additional electric buses. Plus the infrastructure for the EV buses will be in place come this spring. We've also done some the Parklet program and expanded that and formalized that with a big change coming or changes coming this October. We'll have a good idea of what parklets are going to be out there. And then lastly, like I had mentioned earlier, we've done some sidewalk expansions to improve walkability of our community. So, and then lastly, I want to address the parking and access, the access and parking management plan is intended to support and bring parking initiatives into alignment with other major city goals like carbon neutrality of 2035, the downtown concept plan, and the active transportation plan. And from here, I'll turn it back over to Ben.
All right. Thank you, Gavin, for that important context there. Does anyone in the members of the public have any questions about that bit of background or some of the major goals or objectives we're trying to support here? If so, feel free to type those into the chat and we can try to address those in turn. Okay, back to Mentimeter. I want to get a few more group questions going. Okay, I see a couple questions also coming into the chat. We'll try to get to those right after Menti here. All right, so question 6, how much do you think the access and parking management plan update should be influenced by these city goals? The ones that Gavin mentioned there about mode share and the active transportation plan, carbon emission reductions, so on and so forth. Right, let a few more votes pop in here and the sliders to bounce around. Okay, not to put my finger on the scale of the last couple of votes here, but we're seeing some pretty strong favorability, that both of these goals are pretty central in terms of how we evaluate and think about the effectiveness of the APMP strategies that we'll be thinking of in the next couple of months. Okay, I'm gonna pop on to the next question here. In an area with many shops, restaurants, and general attractions, like in downtown SLO, how important do you think it is to provide space for each of the following uses? And this goes on a not at all important to very important scale. All right, so it's like a bag of Skittles showing up on screen here. This is great. I see 6 votes in. We'll let that number tick up a little bit more here. Okay. All right, I think the vote's slowing down here a little bit. Strong support for active travel access, including walking and biking and transit access. And then down at the bottom of the screen there, pretty strong support for space for community uses, outdoor dining, public art, food trucks, mini parks, and things of that variety. And then kind of middle of the road support here for space for businesses and employees to drive and park their, sorry, I meant cars, not cards. Thanks for working with me on that typo. And then space for visitors to drive and park their cars. So there's a balance of needs here and interests that we're going for, and really understanding that there's limited space in the street, in the right of way, in private parking lots, with walking and biking and transit access. We have to balance all of that space across a lot of different users. Okay. So a couple questions in the chat here. Gavin and Alex, I want to make sure you're seeing these, and if there's anything you want to speak about in terms of, one question here about the meters now running until 9 p.m. And if you've heard any general feedback about that change.
Yeah, I can jump in there and touch on that. So we've had, it is a mixed return on that. There have been complaints about us operating until 9 p.m. for enforcement and charging till 9 p.m. for enforcement. There's also been some complaints about us still having the 2-hour restriction in the meters because customers want to park there and extend their time beyond that time period to attend dining or a show in the downtown area. Those are things we're working on, is expanding to a tiered based pricing structure so someone can extend for a greater period of time in the core. With regard to the complaints that we have had about us operating until 9, there's other municipalities that operate until similar hours. The goal behind us expanding the hours of operation was to create more on-street parking for the customer base that comes down in the evening hours. We had historically been, those spaces have historically been operated and taken by employees in the downtown area. And while we don't want to negatively impact employee parking, we do need to conserve our premium parking for patrons of the downtown. We also reduced the parking rate inside the parking structures to encourage responsible parking behavior by our employees.
All right, thanks, Gavin, for that. Yeah, I see a couple other comments along the same lines for the 9 p.m. parking. Also appreciate a couple chats here, making sure to pay attention to those needing access for those with disabilities. And Krista offering up support for congestion, peak hour pricing, for trucks and potentially other users during peak times. So I think that's a great strategy to be mulling over and that we can talk about later in our discussion period. Okay. Let's keep marching on here a little bit. Okay, so thank you for that round of questions. We're going to hand it back to Chrissy here for a little bit to show you all some of the sort of factual and experiential observations that we've made about your access and parking system over the past few months. So.
Great, thanks, Ben.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about the data. So to understand current parking conditions, we went out and collected a lot of data. First, we conducted a parking space inventory, which means we counted the number of spaces for every downtown street, garage, surface lot location. So we know how many spaces exist. And then we wanted to understand how parking spaces were used. So we collected parking occupancy data for each parking space. And we did that already on 2 days, Thursday, July 21st, which was Farmers Market Day, and then Saturday, July 23rd, which was a Saturday, like I said. And we collected that data from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So our initial findings are shown on this slide here. This slide shows how parking is used during the peak parking time for each day of our data collection. So it's what we call a heat map. So on Saturday, that peak parking time was 1 p.m., so around lunchtime. At 1 p.m. on a Saturday was when the most cars were parked throughout the day that we saw. from when we collected data from the 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. time. And on Thursday, the peak parking time was at 7 p.m., right in the middle of farmers market. So that was when the most cars were parked on a Thursday, was at 7 p.m. Now these maps are colored. So areas of red are places where parking is very highly utilized. Areas of orange and yellow are places where utilization is medium and there are still spaces available. And areas of green are places where are lots of parking spaces available. And then you'll see on the farmers market map, the shaded purple areas are the areas that are closed to vehicles on Thursdays for the farmers market. So what we did find was that, first, parking demand is somewhat unbalanced across downtown. There are areas with high demand and then areas with low demand. As you can see, there's red, there's green, but there are available spaces. There's even green during farmers market. You can see on the Thursday map on the right, there's areas where streets have yellow or the orange, green, some of the garages are orange. So there is some available parking even during farmers market, which was really the peak of the peak time. Now, and I say that, there is available parking, but I recognize and our team recognizes that some stretches of Higuera, Marsh, Monterey, Osos, and others, they are quite full and they feel like parking is quite full. But at the same time, just a block or two away are streets and garages with uses below 70% utilization and even below 50% utilization. So there is some available parking. It just might not be intuitive to find. Even during farmers market, like I said, when it feels quite full, there are spaces in the garages. So on the next slide, we are showing how parking demand looks across the day. So this graphic is showing you parking occupancy changes by hour. So during the times we collected from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So on Saturday, you can see parking occupancy never reached above 60% utilization. So there are hundreds of spaces available, even during the very peak time on Saturday at 1 p.m. when parking was the most used. And then on farmers market Thursdays, you can see during that 1 hour at 7 p.m., there's a big rush for demand, a big rush for parking, and then it quickly drops. So you can see even on Thursdays when there's still lots of activity, lots of demand, there's still hundreds of spaces available. And when you think about farmers market, this is an event that's known across the country. Thousands of people attend. We do expect it to be very busy. This is not unusual. This is a good thing because people want to be in downtown San Luis Obispo. And at the same time, though, thinking about a farmers market when it's the peak of the peak and thinking about, for example, Saturday when your parking is only 60% utilized and there's hundreds of available parking spaces, we wouldn't want to design and supply parking to accommodate that farmers market peak hour, that 1 hour of the week. That would vastly oversupply parking for what is needed to satisfy demand on a regular basis. And that would also just have parking would dominate downtown. It would create a detriment to what many people love about San Luis Obispo is walking around, enjoying the tree-lined streets, visiting the small businesses and places to visit. So we don't want parking to dominate. So we wouldn't want to build parking supply to that peak. So for the plan update, we'll be thinking about ways to spread parking demand around downtown more evenly for customers, employees, visitors, so that we can better utilize the areas where there is parking available, even during peak parking times. And then we also want to think about, as Gavin was talking about, how do we reduce some demand by encouraging biking, walking, and transit when it's possible for those who choose to take those travel options. And I also want to highlight that this is summer data. We collected in July, but we will be going out again this week, actually, so that we can look at data and changes for when school's in session and look at any differences in those results. And on the next slide, you'll see that we also looked at residential parking permit areas. And we collected areas, data in those areas. You can see that on this map, there's a lot of green. We saw a lot of parking availability on streets with residential permits. However, we know that there are issues when school is back in session. So this week we'll be out collecting data in those areas to see any differences between when school is in session and the summer. Next slide. So we've also spent a lot of time downtown observing people and how people get around, taking a lot of time to understand the history of San Luis Obispo's downtown concept, which is about being active, a vibrant place with streets for people, especially with the farmers market that so many people enjoy. As you can see on the next slide, the city continues to invest in biking, walking, and active modes of transportation. There's creative uses of the curb space with the bike plaza, where if you even have a larger e-bike, you have a place to park it. And then the city will soon be thinking about the long-term planning for transit through the transit revitalization plan, to think about service. And I know many of you are chatting about transit in the chat, and we definitely see from your Mentimeter responses that transit is an option that people want to see more of. So that will be ongoing as well. But importantly, the city is making all these investments as part of a holistic transportation system, so that those who can bike and walk and ride transit, so that that's a safe and enjoyable option, especially for the long term. And then because those investments have the benefit of opening up public space, parking spaces for those who need to drive and park downtown, so it benefits everyone. So we want to think about this holistic vision for transportation downtown. And then the city is also formalizing the outdoor dining parklet program, going from the temporary program during the pandemic that supported business to a more formal program with design standards to prepare for long-term success. There's also the upcoming new garage at Palma de Pomo. And then the city is always considering new ways to manage the curb, to balance parking demand, whether that's through parking pricing, technology, creating spaces so truck delivery doesn't block traffic, so you can easily get around and you're not stuck behind a truck that's delivering goods to a business while you're trying to find parking. So those are some of our initial data findings and observations that we wanted to share with you. Happy to answer any questions about those findings in the breakout room or after 7:30. And I will now hand it back over to Ben so that we can get your further input on the plan.
All right, thank you very much, Chrissy. Let's keep going here. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Loading zones. We're always thinking about loading zones. All right, we've got a few more group questions coming up here on Mentimeter. I do want to point out some of the excellent activity going on in the chat here. And speak to some of this. I know folks were wondering if there's pre-pandemic data that's that granular on parking utilization, from 2019 or earlier. Alex and Gavin, you might want to put something in the chat in response to that, but I don't think you have anything quite so detailed. Yeah, then a question from Stephen, great question here, for we on the consultant side and everyone involved really, are we looking at the economic impacts of parking and access to downtown? We certainly are in a softer sense. We're not doing a hard quantitative economic sort of analysis of the exact transportation network or parking impacts here. But as we're thinking about expanding and trying to improve a variety of access and parking strategies in downtown SLO, I think we agree with your premise here that giving people a wide variety of options to get to and move around downtown in your economic heart will certainly prove beneficial to business viability, housing and residential viability, and just the blend of people who are able to sort of affordably partake in downtown. So, these are things we can certainly follow up more in our discussion groups here too. Okay, a couple more on the Mentimeter here. So this is that transition point where we're starting to get some straw poll thoughts from you all about parking and transportation solutions. So if you can hop into Menti and give us your opinions about any of these parking solutions that you'd be willing to consider, that would be wonderful. And let's keep these results in mind, as we jump into the discussion groups later on. All right, judging by the number of dots, I got the multi-option thing right on this one. Okay, seeing a lot of favorability here for improving directional signage. Maybe understanding that free parking spot is out there somewhere. If you could only find it, we know that a lot of vehicles circulating around downtowns just are hunting for parking. And if we can alleviate that, that can make a major improvement. Looking to encourage strategies for public parking and shared parking agreements, looking to add more short-term delivery and passenger pickup and drop-off zones. That's a need that has really come to the forefront the last couple of years during this pandemic and is likely to stay around. Balancing parking supply by adjusting the price of paid parking at high demand locations. So that's sort of a version of that congestion or surge charging that some of you mentioned in the chat there. So, all right, so a variety of thoughts on the parking strategies here. All right, and then let's keep marching forward here. One more question. Which of the following transportation solutions would you be willing to consider? Please select all that apply. I know with only 6 options here, we haven't covered nearly everything. So feel free to add stuff also to the Zoom chat and then keep it back of pocket for our discussion breakout groups that will start right after this. Okay, so kind of some support across the board for these options. A lot of strong voting for improving sidewalk conditions and connectivity to create, finish that last block of connection to get to your important destination. Support for more quality bikeways and bike parking. Improving public transportation frequency and route options. Bottom right corner, gets into the land use relationship with transportation of a deeper blend of housing, businesses, and other uses all downtown, which makes it easier to have your destinations and attractions nearby. And then, bottom middle, provide cash benefits to downtown employees who don't drive alone to commute. So that's kind of an incentive policy program there that we wonkily will call transportation demand management, but can really help incentivize behavior and help keep cash in people's wallets. Just keeping an eye on the chat here if there's anything else to follow up. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your input to this point. Keep us marching along here as promised and just about right on schedule. We're going to pop into some breakout rooms. So we're going to use the magic of Zoom to randomly send all of you into one of 4 or 5 breakout rooms. There'll be a person from, me and my colleagues from Walker Consultants will be there to help facilitate. We'll be in the rooms for 20 to 25 minutes or so. And I think the math is that probably 5 or 6 members of the community will be in each. And we hope that that can just be a more kind of freewheeling discussion to follow up on anything you've seen so far in these presentations, to give us deeper input on some of the ideas that you've offered up and voted on here, and just to better understand, the potential impact of this project, how you can weigh in today and how you can weigh in the future. So when we get into these breakout rooms, also keep in mind that there are 2 active Mentimeter questions that will be going. And I'm going to try to kind of split it in half so that one of them is up for about half the time. The second one's up for the second half. Feel free to put your input in Mentimeter sort of as we go. But also know that you'll be unmuted in these breakout rooms and the chat will be open as well. So we welcome, all variety of input and conversation that you want to offer up. We'll see exactly what the numbers look like here. If people are clamoring to provide comments, we might have to do a raise your hand situation, but I think we can probably manage a little bit more casually in there. So we'll launch into the breakout rooms here shortly. This is a reminder to project team members to hit the record button in there. So full disclosure, these breakout rooms will be recorded. And then we're going to come back after the breakout rooms, and those of us from Walker Consultants will provide just a quick round robin kind of summary of input that we've heard during those breakouts. And that should get us, close to 7:30, at which point we'll wrap up. All right. Does anyone have any questions before we disappear into the breakout ether for a few minutes? All right. Hearing none, I think Tanya, you're in charge of the magic button.
All right, hopefully this works.
Hold your breath, everyone. Here we go.
Gonna start it now, okay?
All right. Well, hello, everyone. We'll give this about another minute here since closing up the breakout rooms can take a minute or two. Let people filter back in here. I've been doing the screen share, so this is my first time seeing all of your icons at once. Thank you for being here. But while we're at it, any of you members of the community have anything that came up in your breakout room that you think is really sort of important to share across the entire group here? Just kind of want to open it up to everyone in attendance tonight for a little wheeling and dealing. But then we Walker staff will also do a quick round robin. If I can read the notes I scribbled for myself here. Okay. All right. Thank you, Austin. Take care. Have a good night. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna, try to seek to wrap up the formal programming here in about 12 minutes or so. So if we spend, 9 minutes, maybe 8 or 9 minutes, just a couple minutes for each group, giving a quick summary of some of the most salient points that came up. We can do that now, and then we will close out the program. So I guess I can get this going. I forget my room number, but a great conversation with a few folks, including at least one downtown restaurant owner, new restaurant owner, that's Robin, who had a lot of input about, late night employee access, post midnight parking options, how transit, walking and biking may not feel like particularly viable options, that late in the evening. As well as, a little bit of confusion about some of the parking pricing and enforcement that happens during those late night hours. So I think that kind of makes it incumbent upon this project that with whatever policies and regulations and tools we come up with, to be really clear in our communication and education strategy in downtown to residential permit district holders about what these kind of rules and management practices are. That can be an easy thing to overlook, but if people don't know about the operations, they can get rendered much less effective. Our group also, really wanted to encourage additional outreach and making a specific effort to contact employees, students, and people who may not necessarily have the inclination to always participate in these kind of planning processes. So it's really important for us to go out and reach those folks. We hope the survey helps get at that. I hope all of you have taken the survey, and please send it to anyone and everyone colleagues and employees, or friends in your book club. So yeah, I think those are some of the key points in my group, and a pretty robust chat dialogue going there too, with a few people who had microphones that weren't working. So we've got a nice written record as well. Chrissy, how are things in your group?
Yeah, I'm just looking quickly at all my notes. Yeah, we had a very lively group and heard a lot of different ideas around access and parking. So definitely concerns around secure bike parking and the need for more secure bike parking, even thinking about converting some spots in garages to paid secure bike parking. The need for better transit service within slow and then outside of slow to slow. Safety, especially entering and exiting the garages for drivers. So drivers watching out for pedestrians and cyclists, and then pedestrians and cyclists watching for drivers exiting. There's seems to be some conflict there that a few people mentioned. some people said that there isn't really a parking problem. The first hour is free is nice, but it's probably not the best policy. Heard overall that there's an over prioritization of cars, thinking about Higuera Street. Is it possible to shut down Higuera to cars? Realizing that's the most prime space, and is vehicle storage the best use of that space, of each parking space? Is there opportunities for wider sidewalks or more ADA spaces on Higuera? And then, yeah, I mean, generally, increased signage and wayfinding to parking, maybe using technology, that also came up. And just overall, happy with some of the pedestrian improvements, bike improvements, but also concerns around larger vehicles and RVs and pickup trucks, larger pickup trucks parking, can they be directed somewhere else? So lots of great discussion. I have a lot of good notes.
All right. Thanks, Chrissy. Ellen, you had a group, right? What was popular in your room?
Yeah, in my group, there was some people looking forward to the return of transit to pre-pandemic levels, and some excitement around the trolley's return, and also an interest in bike parking, and especially secure bike parking, and planning for years into the future. Then we were reminded that not everyone is physically able to walk even several blocks from where they park to their destination. So that's really important that parking be made available. And then we discussed how the ADA placards can provide more options for those who are mobility impaired. And then we also dove into what that 85% threshold means for parking, and how when we look at the 85% for the city as a whole, it can still seem like there's a parking problem when certain blocks may be more occupied and people aren't aware of where there are spaces available further on the outskirts of downtown.
Great, covered a whole slew of topics there. Thank you, everyone in Ellen's group. All right, I think Jonathan, maybe you were our final group.
Yeah, thank you. We heard from a downtown business whose customers had anxiety about driving downtown to find a spot in time to make a studio class, and then worrying about the amount of time they have available to park, and then kind of rushing out to get back to campus or wherever they live in town. So I think I heard a request to try and address some of that, relieve some of that anxiety, increase occupancy in the most in-demand areas. And then that eventually led to a conversation about the 85% target occupancy, and a little bit into price strategies and some of that behavior. I think we heard support for adding density downtown, housing residents downtown as a way to increase and support commercial activity, as well as folks who might need to move to town here, and what kind of product or amenity is being offered by that downtown experience. There was an acknowledgement that maybe prioritization shouldn't be placed on moving people through the area, but I heard a request for prioritizing spending time in that area and then circulating within the downtown or within the city itself. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan and Jonathan's group. So before we give the quick wrap up about next steps and whatnot here, any of you community members, is there anything we neglected to summarize? Is anything you want to bring up for the entire audience here to ruminate on? And of course, remember, we'll be around informally until 8 o'clock for any follow-up discussion or deeper dives you all want to get into. All right. Well, let me hop back into screen share here real quick. Get this going. Okay, are you all seeing question 10 and some scrolling results now? Thank you to all of you who are giving Mentimeter input along the way there. I know we didn't have screen share up, so you may not have seen these results coming in real time. But there's some great written comments here and some stuff that's nicely down in the weeds for us to really investigate and think about access and parking opportunities. So all of this is part of our official outreach record now. Let's see if I can get this to go to the next slide here. Same thing with question 11, points about secure bike parking, secure bike parking with 3 exclamation points. Okay, safe bike lanes. This is great. Hard to keep track of all these moving comments. Better lighting. Parking solutions, balancing street demands, extended public transit hours. So, okay, so really, really truly valuable input here. Thank you. So to kind of wrap this up, this is our primary virtual open house over the course of this project. But there will be some other opportunities that you all can attend and weigh in, through early next year. One thing, if you have not taken our online survey, please do so as soon as you can. We're going to keep it open until a week from Friday. And please send this link to anyone and everyone you know who's a resident, worker, visitor, student, or just general interested party in slow transportation. We'll pull the map up here on the future meetings, and then make sure to keep watching the city website and social media for updates, where we'll give some previews of some of the strategies that we're exploring and provide more detail about engagement opportunities. So, those again being these points here in blue and green, where we'll be going in front of the Active Transportation Committee, City Council, Planning Commission for both review and then eventual, hopefully, adoption of this process. We'll also have those parking use counts that are occurring tomorrow and Saturday. So that'll be a really interesting new data point for us to dig into. We know that Cal Poly students are back in session, and so that certainly changes the transportation profile of the entire city. And then really with that, this is our thank you and good night. We really appreciate all of the input that you've provided in your local perspective as people who transport yourself around SLO on often a daily basis. So we're going to stick around until 8 o'clock. If there are any topics you want to follow up on, that will stay recorded and part of the record. And we are at your disposal. This is, if we were doing this in person, this would be when you just kind of walk and talk with someone into the parking lot. But we're doing it from our own living rooms. So with that, that's all I've got. Anything else from Walker staff or City of SLO staff?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that was here tonight. We really appreciate the feedback. This helps us really plan for our future and where we're going, taking into consideration what your needs are and how we achieve, bringing the community together.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you, Gavin, and community members. All right. I realize we may have to unmute you if anyone wants to say anything. So. Tanya, I might look to you for that. Tina, your hand is raised.
Yes, let me
Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
my name is Bettina Swigger. I'm the CEO of the Downtown Association, and I just want to thank you for this really helpful forum. It was great to see some of the data points, and I really liked the Menti platform. That was cool. I haven't used that before. I think there's some really wonderful general ideas in the planning process that are coming up, and I'm really eager to see some of the more specific items that come up, so particularly around pricing, because that's been a huge focus of the conversations that we have with the downtown businesses. We did a lot of outreach with people, and I see a few business owners on the call tonight, including our board president, a couple of other people from our board of directors. Unfortunately, business owners are they're busy running their businesses. So I do think if there's a way to do more specifics when things are getting a little more granular in the plan, we would love to participate as much as we can. And I just wanted to remind folks that we are a resource as well. And we're excited about all the improvements that are coming to downtown, because we think they are making for a better downtown experience for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Bettina. Okay, I have it on good authority that you can now unmute yourselves, everyone.
All
If
right,
there's anything.
that does work.
Cliff. All right, perfect.
So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for having this forum and for listening to the community. It was great to hear what other folks with different backgrounds think about the issues, and to engage with you. Felt heard, and I'm really excited to see how some of the suggestions pan out in the future. Everybody here is invested in the future of flow, and it's exciting to see.
Great. Thank you, Cliff. All right. Bye. Good night, Bettina. And anyone else who's heading off, sleep tight. Stephen, we hope you're compelled to move to slow now. This meeting has made it irresistible. I'm thinking about it. Sunnier than Oregon.
Well, especially since you're in the dark.
I know this lighting thing didn't work out quite as well as I had hoped. I apologize.
Yeah, you can see. We can see
kinda,
it. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it works fine.
If our meeting were held on Halloween, this would be a great effect. All right. Kyle or Steven, anything that you're interested in closing the night up with? All right. Well, I think we spent 95 minutes spreading the good word and generating some great ideas here. So I appreciate it all.
Oh, will the recording of this be made available?
Yeah, so we'll be recording, or it's recorded tonight. We're hoping to get this up by the beginning of next week. We're going to work with IT over the next day or two to have it posted. It'll be posted to the city's YouTube channel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I suppose we can wrap up. But Gavin, you'll be the official arbiter of our closing time.
Yeah, Stephen or Kyle, if you don't have any questions, we're going to close the evening for the night, if that's okay with you.
All right.
All right.
I reckon that'll do it. Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
great night.
Have a good night now.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
Lynn.
I'm just making sure to copy the entire chat here. Hold on. Word button.
I mean, if nobody else wants to jump right in, I have, I definitely have some thoughts and some questions. I'm kind of coming at this from a few different angles. I'm a downtown business owner. I'm an employer, and I'm also a downtown resident. I'm fortunate that I can walk to work from where I live, which is great. I believe in, alternate modes of transportation. Obviously, the more we can walk, the more we can bike, the more we can take public transport is great. For my particular industry in downtown SLO, which is restaurants, hospitality, bars, public transportation doesn't necessarily work too well because of the hours. And I understand that that is something that would take quite a lot to expand, although I think that it would be great if we could. Additionally, I was the one I posted in the chat about my employees buying the passes to the parking structures,
Mhm.
and hopefully I got a little clarity on that, and I would be more than happy to be proved wrong on this. But the research that I did on the city website and everything says that it allows for parking from 6 a.m. to 12 midnight, and that anything past that is considered overnight parking. That would
Mhm.
obviously not work for my employees who sometimes do not get off before that time. So I want to make sure that they are safe,
Mhm.
and that they're also, that it's financially viable for them to, find a way to park in a safe place to get to their work. And
Yeah.
it kind of folds in with the extension of the time to 9 p.m. That it definitely it affects my business as far as people. I don't think that most people are deciding not to go out because the parking was extended, the fees until 9 p.m., but it's definitely something I hear about quite a bit. And the 2-hour time limit can be problematic.
Yeah, those are definitely really fair concerns, and it sounds like there's been maybe some new policy changes that are catching you
Definitely.
off guard a bit, and
Yeah.
particularly your employees who may, are the ones impacted by it after midnight, of course.
And I just saw that somebody threw into the chat that they used to buy the 10-hour meter passes. I used to do that too. It's about equidistant for my employees to the business location. The issue with the 10-hour meters is that they tend to be a few blocks out of the downtown core. It's not as well lit, and if it's late at night, people walk into their cars with a bunch of cash is not the most ideal situation.
Right.
And I know that we generally talk about like daytime things that happen in downtown SLO, but it is important to note that hospitality and restaurants and bars are really kind of a lifeblood of downtown San Luis Obispo, and not everything kind of rolls up at 9 p.m. always.
Right. Yeah, it's a good thing to have a downtown that goes well into the night, I think. So
generating a lot of revenue.
There. Yeah. So, no, thank you for that, Robin. Does anyone else have immediate topics you want to mention for discussion? Anything that you voted on, in terms of access improvement strategies that you want to throw your weight behind? Got some people coming and going. That was Tanya, my colleague. Okay. So, I guess Robin, to dive deeper on employee parking. Do you know of any programs the city uses to educate employees or material they distribute to businesses about transportation options?
I
Or
have
are
not
you
seen any.
kind of fending for yourself?
I have not seen any. I think it would be a very valuable thing.
Mhm.
And I think also just because, like I said before, I threw it into the chat and somebody told me that that does not count as overnight parking if it's past midnight, but I don't want to tell my employees that if that's not the case. So I
Right.
think some clarification would be great and some options.
Yeah. Okay.
Robin, if I could just follow up on your overnight parking fee. So
Yes.
the person who responded, that's Alex. He used to work for the parking services department.
Mhm.
And so the information is correct. If your employee leaves before 5 a.m., they won't be charged that overnight fee. But I do know it is a pretty high fee, and I totally agree with all of your, safety concerns and financial concerns.
Yeah, no, that is great clarification, Shannon, and thank you for that, because it was I did a pretty deep dive onto the city's website with that, and it wasn't super clear. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably something that could be improved upon as well, the city's website.
I'm writing that down in big bold letters here. So. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one thing to have policies. It's another to make sure they're widely known and that it can help people comply, whether it's a 2-hour parking limit or a late night exit from a garage, or advocating for late night bus service. All of that's really, really fair game, particularly in sort of the witching hours of people needing to get around town.
And going off that, Ben, I'm not sure if this is something that you can help with, but if there's an option to pay for the 10-hour meter passes and the Prox cards online, that would be wonderful. I know that I've spoken with Gavin and Alex about this, but I think the sooner the better. I know that people have to physically go to the office and deal with it there, and it's just cumbersome.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I don't know quite how that functions right now, but yeah, if you're saying that it's an office only thing, that's definitely a barrier. Particularly if some of those 10-hour employees may not even come downtown until after 5 p.m. in some cases. How could you all describe how you get to downtown, how frequently? C. Bertard, I know you can't chat or turn your microphone on, but if you want to put anything in the chat, that'd be great. Or just any other, unique experiences of your colleagues or employees, whether it's parking, late night bus service that may have disappeared recently, biking access.
Well, I can start. I work downtown, so I actually live just off of downtown. So I usually walk, but sometimes I do drive in. And I worked downtown when I was a student as well. So I had to, navigate parking, and my employer did not provide any resources or information. So I just kind of had to figure it out for myself. And I did, but it would be great to get that information to the business owners or the managers.
Yeah. Okay, so definitely some information sharing needs here. We've heard anecdotally that the 9 p.m. parking may be deterring customers and whatnot. Do you all have any thoughts on kind of the changing paid parking regime, whether it's later into the night, the changing rates? Are you seeing that influences people's behavior and travel patterns at all?
I would say that I've definitely gotten some feedback to that end, especially, the extension to 9 p.m., but that in conjunction with the 2-hour time limit means, people can do one thing when they're downtown. They can go to dinner, or they can go to a movie, or they can do, something else. They can't do both without moving their car, which, is kind of prohibitive to some people and the way that they want to evening.
Right. Stephen and Ren, are you able to unmute? And is there anything you want to offer up on these topics about, your own travel experiences? Or Stephen, you might have experiences from other towns wherever you live now, but lessons learned for good or bad. If you're not able to unmute, we'll welcome things in the chat here too. That's fine. Okay. Robin or Shannon, are there other sort of mid-sized downtowns around California or the country that you hold in high regard, that you like visiting or think do transportation right in some ways? Any lessons that SLO could learn from?
It's kind of hard to compare downtown San Luis Obispo to other cities, especially in
So
California.
I've learned, yeah.
I mean, we can look to, downtown Paso Robles, which is just to our north, but they have issues as well. Santa Barbara is certainly a little bit larger and they have a great downtown core, but they've had a lot of vacancies over the past few years. So it's a little bit changed. Santa Barbara does definitely have better public transportation. And it was mentioned before in one of the chats about a kind of a bike locker system, or a system where people can lock up their bikes in a more safe way. I've known quite a few people who have had their bikes stolen over the past 6 months. And
Okay.
If that is going to happen, then it's hard to ask people to bike downtown if they're worried about that happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one area we're exploring is bike parking provisions. Sometimes there's only so much you can do on the street, but in new developments or residential or hotels that come in, is there secure bike parking that can exist? And I definitely know the city is building a large monitored and locked bike locker in this new garage that's coming online in a few years. But that may only be a drop in the bucket in the bike theft world, which is kind of rampant up and down the West Coast. So yeah. So Ren, you're saying you live close enough to walk downtown if the weather is good. Used to be a bike rider, but that's starting to feel a bit too dangerous with distracted drivers. And then bike lanes may exist and then suddenly disappear at some point. I know how that feels. So yeah, we know that the city is doing the repaving projects. They've started to put in protected bike lanes or bikeways in certain opportunistic areas. But it may not, comprise a complete feeling network necessarily. Do you all have thoughts about kind of street design, more significant overhauls to the way that sidewalks, bike lanes, bus stops are given space in the street compared to cars, or compared to on-street parking is often the trade-off?
It can definitely get tight on some of the streets where you have traffic going in both directions and parking on both sides of the street. I mean, I know that I wouldn't ride my bike down certain streets because of that. And I, just because a lot of these things were built so long ago, they can definitely get tight with traffic going in both directions and parking on both sides. So I don't know what the fix would be to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a case of geometry and balancing needs. But yeah, there still are some of those faster, high volume streets through downtown that could benefit from traffic calming, could benefit from full or partial street closures. Monterey has that one little section over by the park there. How do you all think about maybe some of those bigger moves for downtown? Whether it's closing vehicles off for no car access, really investing in protected bikeways, things like that.
I'm not 100% against like closures of some streets. I know it's been batted around for years with downtown. With the decision to keep the parklets on the streets, it may have brought us one step closer to that, I feel like. It's I think it would have to be a balance of still having access to certain services and things that need to happen to those businesses.
Yeah.
But also possibly I've seen it work before, turning certain areas into kind of walking plazas.
Right. Do you have one of the parklets or outdoor dining, Robin, at your place?
We actually opened earlier this year. So there was a parklet erected in front of, like, half in front of our business and half in front of our neighbors. They've been using it, but we're kind of in the process of deciding whether we want to make that permanent or not. We just opened our back patio, so it's not necessarily something that we want to keep, but we're looking at it.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Where do you get all your, loading, deliveries, trash pickup, all that stuff from your restaurant?
Business, we do not have back access.
Mhm.
So, and that's the way with many downtown businesses. If you drive through downtown or walk through downtown at, somewhere between 7 and 9 in the morning, you're going to see a lot of delivery trucks on Higuera Street.
Yeah, we definitely noticed that a couple weeks ago. So you take your deliveries just off the main street there. Okay. Just taking some notes here. All right. C. Bears Hard. Let's see. SLO is very unique. I visit Monterey and enjoy their parking options. High tourist population, on-street parking, parking garage, and parking lots. Yeah, that'll be Monterey, other comparable cities. I think you're going to see a similar blend of parking options, perhaps. But as we were talking and saw in the poll results, like navigation and wayfinding to parking is a major need in SLO. Whether it's those availability signs, wayfinding signage, so on and so forth. So even Carmel offers 90 minutes free, right? Yeah, one thing we're looking into in this project is kind of that balance of providing convenient, accessible parking for tourists and customers who may not always be the most frequent downtown SLO visitors. How do you balance that with disability parking needs or employee parking needs? And it's generally considered best practice to try to keep those on-street spaces near the restaurants and retail, with shorter time limits, potentially higher pricing to encourage that turnover of customers, and to have enough enforcement in place to encourage compliance for that. But that does create those situations Robin mentioned where employees may be parking farther away than they're comfortable making that late night, walk at 1 a.m. with cash stuffed pockets. So we are trying to be cognizant of all those kind of different user scenarios that are occurring. I know we're going to close up here in a minute or two, so I just want to encourage everyone to keep adding comments in the chat And then if you're able to hop over into Mentimeter, we have question 11 open right now for any input and comments that you want to put in there. And remember, the code is 6914732. So I'm hearing from some of my colleagues that the people lost Mentimeter when we went to the breakout rooms. So. Well, this project goes, roughly through February. Planning projects always have tentative deadlines, but we're hoping to get kind of wrapped up by then. Are there key things that you all want to see further explored and represented at future planning commission meetings, city council workshops? Maybe topics that we all as consultants and the parking services staff can't necessarily solve because they might be slightly political topics or require big funding infusions. What are some of the key messages you'd want us to relay to city decision makers?
I think getting the input of a larger cross section of the population is important. Be it, local residents, business owners, employees, students, whoever that is. But people who don't necessarily tend to participate in things like this, maybe a stronger reach out or a reach out to specific demographics.
Okay, definitely. Are there particular questions you think we should be asking those people? Just maybe some of the basics about how they travel, what their concerns are.
How they get around, but also, frustrations or perhaps questions that they have as well.
Okay. And Robin, if you wouldn't mind, if you've seen the online survey, would you mind passing that on to your employees if you consider it appropriate?
Did.
You did. All right. I thought you might have. So I feel like you're on top of things with this. So I appreciate that a lot. Okay, I think we're going to get pulled out here in about 20 seconds, if my timer is correct. I really appreciate you all spending, your evening with us, kind of getting in depth and wonky on some of these topics. We're early on, and what you're offering right now is helping us identify what's important and shape what you think is going to be effective. So, thank you very much.
Hi, Leah.
Hi there.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Faint.
I have to hop on to another meeting in 9 minutes, so
Okay.
can't stay too long, but.
Tanya, did it send you to our meeting, to our breakout room?
No, I popped in this one.
Oh, okay.
I was just gonna kind of pop in and make sure that people got split up okay.
Yeah.
It looks like it worked okay.
Yeah, it works. Worked well.
Great.
So we're waiting. Ben is going to put some slides up that we can respond to.
I don't know that he's sharing. I don't know that Ben's sharing on this screen. So I think folks should just have Mentimeter up so that you could provide your comments within the Mentimeter platform. I think that was the idea.
Oh, okay. So Tanya, do you have Mentimeter up?
I will get it up.
Okay. I think I just need the, or if you, do you have the code? I had my Zoom up for, do you have the code, Tanya? If you,
I don't right now, but I'll find it.
oh,
here.
okay, I'll get the code. Okay, got it. Thank you, Cliff. Okay. So first we want to, you can see question 10. Do you have any suggestions for improving operations in parking operations in downtown, or ideas you want to comment on? There was lots of discussion in the chat, so this is an opportunity. You can include your answer here in Menti. We can also talk, there's only a few of us, so we can also have a live discussion if you'd like. Yeah, whatever people feel comfortable with. I know some people like to type, to write their answers down. If you like to talk to, we can do that as well.
I could just kind of go ahead with the thoughts I have, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Just to add some context, we live in Los Osos and actually do drive in most of the time because the transit from here isn't wonderful. But overall, I'd really like to see slow deprioritize cars. Investing in transit and making improvements for everyone in the future will keep improving access. You know, fuel is going to continue to get more expensive. And I'd really love to see the ability for me to take a more direct bus, or like take the e-bike and feel secure in leaving it there. Obviously, I know only so much is in y'all's control. I think it's really important to prioritize access for disabled folks. That's difficult even now with our current situation. I was talking to a friend of mine who hasn't lived here in a decade, and it was an issue for them then. So proper drop-off locations, restricted parking access, that kind of stuff. I appreciate the efforts of the city to prioritize bike infrastructure. The actual protected lanes are great. You know, sharrows are kind of not super awesome. Secure bike storage would be transformative in my ability to like come downtown and hang out. In San Francisco or places like that, I'll use their card access bike lockers when I go to visit. Honestly, I'd love to see Higuera shut down to cars and Marsh made two ways. The environment during farmers market is great. People pop in and out of businesses. I think that'd be a really positive, thank you, Louie, a really positive change for the community. I really like that space to spend in between businesses. It's valuable as a customer. If you're trying to be COVID aware, you know, a space to eat outside is wonderful. So yeah, another comment is I actually will, when we go to the farmers market on Saturday, I cruise through downtown in the car, which is like not a great thing, but it's convenient and it's nice to see the people. And I don't think you should prioritize that use of the streets, even though it's my use.
Yeah, so I think that's, you know, some of the feedback we have heard is definitely, even when we were in San Luis Obispo earlier this month, when conducting some stakeholder meetings, we heard about the need for secure bike parking for sure. And we know all the issues that you laid out, Cliff, you know, we've heard them. Yeah, the need for more transit, or more direct transit. Yeah, some of this is a little beyond our scope, but I think all of these are things that the city understands the community wants. And I'd be interested if others have similar feelings, or, maybe feeling something different than Cliff? Any input on parking specifically, or where you'd like to speak, like specifics of where you'd like to see more secure bike parking, or bike lanes?
I can chime in a little bit before I have to hop off. I live in South County, and what I usually do to get into downtown SLO is I take the number 10 bus from the Pismo Park and Ride. And I will often meet other people who do not live in SLO. A lot of times I'll meet people from Morro Bay in San Luis, because it's a halfway point between both of us, or people who live in Paso but work in SLO. I'll meet them on lunch hour or something. I do a lot of like working lunches, working coffees in SLO, because it's the halfway point for a lot of people in the county. And occasionally I have had to drive, and every single time I have to drive, it is the worst ever. Not just because I might get stuck in traffic on the way back, but just it's so much less enjoyable than taking the bus and just getting off downtown. Every time that I've had to take a car, it's because the bus wasn't going to work. Sometimes there's a 3 or 4 hour delay between taking the bus and taking a car. So I just wanted to point out that the transit system going on within SLO and outside of SLO needs to be improved, not just for the people who live there, but for the people who work there, at least until we can build enough housing for everybody who works there.
How long does the bus take from the Pismo Park and Ride for you?
Like 15 minutes. 15, 20 minutes. It's really the same speed as driving, only I get to listen to music or watch funny cat videos on the Wi-Fi on the bus, and instead of paying attention to the road.
Yeah, who wouldn't rather be watching cat videos than driving? Well, thank you, Krista. Any other feedback?
I would echo some of those comments. I think downtown SLO within SLO is one of the better served areas that has transit. But if you're coming from outside of SLO, even if that's a relatively short distance, like a 15-minute bus ride, the headways are not super frequent. They're not frequent enough to be convenient for a lot of people. You have to plan your entire day around them. I used to work in downtown SLO, and I loved getting there by biking or busing. And so I'm sad to see that I think a lot of transit agencies are struggling with hiring and getting a lot of the services back online. But I think that is like a really big missing piece of the puzzle right now. I think the other comment that I'd like to impress on the consultants is like, you guys seem to recognize that people get to downtown SLO in many different ways, but this plan is called the Access and Parking Management Plan. And so the space that cars take up, even in this engagement effort, is outsized, in my opinion, especially if the city wants to move towards more sustainable ways of getting around for the people who can and can afford to. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that input. I think, we talked earlier about the city's goals for increasing biking and walking and transit trips, reducing parking trips, reaching carbon neutrality by 2035. The city can't meet those goals if everyone is driving. We have to think differently about access and what that means for downtown. So yeah, I can really appreciate the need that you're saying for people get to downtown slow in many different ways, and sometimes the loudest voices may, can have an outsized voice, but that's why, we're all here today so that we can make sure that we're receiving input from everyone. But it's when you worked in SLO, did you always travel by bus? Was it convenient, or did you have to take to drive sometimes?
I traveled by bus maybe 4 out of 5 days of the week. And the office I worked at was a couple blocks away from the transit center. So, I mean, you can't really get more convenient than that. Some days when it was inclement weather or something like that, I would try driving, and I'd have to park in a residential neighborhood further away. It wasn't as fun, I would say. And it felt impractical, I guess.
What about suggestions for improving parking operations? Since it sounds like Kimmy and Cliff, you've driven to SLO, and Cliff, you're also driving the streets. Leah, I'm not sure if you want to provide any feedback, but anything specific on parking operations or just parking in general that you'd like the city to know? Or anything else, it doesn't have to be just parking operations.
Okay, this is Leah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Great. Okay, well, I walk and I ride downtown all the time, and I'm very happy with the road diets and the bike and the pedestrian improvements, but I still think many motorists are so aggressive, and they whip around right-hand turns, left-hand turns, regardless of whether there's a pedestrian there. I'd like to point out, especially Morrow Street, which is our bicycle boulevard, especially between Marsh and Monterey. There are so many people pulling in and out of parking spaces. And, there's a lot of short-term activities, and they don't look when they pull in or out of the parking spaces. And it's just very, very dangerous. I know I've had a lot of encounters. I think there's a problem with really large vehicles who parking on the street. Some of the RVs and these monster pickup trucks, they're huge, and they take up 1.5 lanes. 1.5 parking spots. So they're sticking in the space, and I don't know how you can direct them elsewhere, but they shouldn't be parking downtown. And I also want to flag entering and exiting the parking garages. These folks, when they're coming in and out, they totally, at least my observation is, they ignore the bicyclists and the pedestrians, and they just pull right in front of you and they ignore you. And to me, that's this is really a safety issue, and safety should always be our top concern. I don't know how you control the behavior, but I love the idea of closing Higuera Street. It works really well during the farmers market, and it would just be wonderful. We're like some of our European cities, those of us who've been lucky enough to travel to Europe. So those are my comments.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. I think concerning the farmers market, you talk to other cities, and the fact that you can shut down main streets downtown every week for this big community event, that's a really special thing, and other cities would love to figure out how to be able to do something like that.
If I putting on my driver hat, which you asked about a little bit, honestly, so first off, I should start by I'm young, I'm able-bodied, I have basically no problem parking in downtown. I just zoom into one of the garages, park, and then go do my things. I think there's some places where it's almost too easy to park, and I would like to see those spaces reserved for people with genuine need for them. like some of that street parking for either short term for like loading or for people who do need that access. I think that the free hour is actually quite nice for getting things done, but I can understand why that might not be the best policy. I guess I would echo some of the stuff about traffic calming infrastructure. Like when I'm leaving the garages, the approaches to the street are often quite hard to see what's out there. And so, not blaming the drivers or anyone for this, but like I think the design of the structure could be better to let people see what they're entering into, or, I don't know what exactly y'all can do, but that kind of calming stuff would be great.
Yeah, thank you. That's really good input is, Lee and Cliff on safety. Specifically, you both mentioned that approaches from the garage to the street, that you notice if you're a driver or a pedestrian or a cyclist, that there is some conflict there that needs to be corrected.
My partner here just said that some like warning for cyclists or pedestrians that cars are coming it's not the best solution, but might be a good one.
I guess the only thing I would add for parking management is I tend to use the parking garages as well when I have family or friends in town and we all want to go to downtown to eat as a large group or something like that. So as a resident, I'm pretty used to finding those, and that's not an issue. I understand for like a tourist or someone who's just visiting, it might be hard to know where those structures are. So while I'm totally a fan of trying to consolidate the parking into garages as the city can, maybe increase signage or something. I know a lot of cities have parking garages that have like the real time, like the number of spaces that are open. I'm not sure whether SLO does that. I can't remember. I think in most cases, I would be totally supportive of trying to see on-street parking be transitioned out if possible, or be reserved for those with accessible needs. I feel like on-street parking, especially on a street like Higuera or what is it, Marsh, it's such prime real estate, and a couple hours of parking is pretty expensive for the user, to shell out a couple bucks per hour. But if you think about the return the city is getting on that 200 square feet, I'm just thinking, I think like the average parking space is like 10 by 20 or something.
Yeah.
Think
Usually
of like,
22 feet, yeah.
Right. Think of how many parking spaces adds up to like a studio unit of residential, or a small storefront or something like that, or wider sidewalks. I just think it's a real premium space that I think might have better ways to serve the public than parking.
I like one thing there about people knowing and getting access to parking is some way to see what's available on a phone or on that kind of thing before you go. Would be cool. Just to reduce like cruising around looking for a spot or looking for a garage.
Good point. We may get transferred back into the main room. I know we're going to wrap up the breakout rooms, but just so you know, if all of a sudden we go back to the main room, that's why. Yeah, but that's, the technology that's out there. to have better wayfinding to available parking. The city has invested in some of that technology, but yeah, it's definitely the city's exploring ways to increase that use of technology to just make parking easier to find. How about the parking apps? Do you pay by app or do you pay at the meter?
I think it depends.
Depends on if you're, some people always use apps, some people really don't want to use them.
I like kind of generally prefer not to. It depends a lot on the terms and conditions. A lot of them are somewhat terrible and, you know, gather a lot of data, which I don't love the city, you know, like selecting vendors that collect data on people. So in cases like that, I'll try and minimize my footprint.
Good point. Yeah, I know we read those agreements often, and there are privacy protections. You know, they're not allowed to store data and things like that. But you know, I don't know the specifics of slows, but we can definitely look into that.
Yeah, I also don't know slows in particular. I don't know if I've read that one.
Okay.
I guess one more comment to what Kimmy said is about the use of parking spaces is that even converting some spots in garages to paid bicycle parking. I plugged the bike link program earlier, but that would be really great. Just to have secure spots because, you know, people are worried about crime, however warranted it is, and want a more secure storage area. So especially with e-bikes that are you know, I bought an e-bike that cost more than my first car recently. So I think
must be nice. You don't want to get it, you don't want it to be stolen.
Yeah, I also don't buy particularly nice cars, but you know, the having secure storage in those spaces would be great. With charging would be a super extra added bonus.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Do you, does anyone park their bike downtown now? Like in the bike corral or on the sidewalk?
I have not. The last time I took a bike with me downtown, I actually took it into the patio of the restaurant I was eating at, and it had all my camping gear on it, but I just
yeah. Yeah, I know. I think it's challenging anywhere. I don't often lock my bike up in it either. So, but I do if there's secure bike parking. I think that's an important part. So thanks for providing that input. Okay, so we're going.
I was just gonna say I park my bike where I can see it because their bike theft is so prevalent. So I'll lock it, but I will not let it out of my sight.
Yeah. Good point. All right. Okay, well, thank you all for your input. This was very helpful. It took some really good notes. So let's go back to the main room and then we can hear what the other group said and share with the other groups what we discussed. Right. So thank you for your feedback.
Thank you for facilitating, Chrissy.
Yeah, no, it's just a great room to you all provide a great feedback, and you know, and I would also encourage you to take the survey as well if you haven't already. We'll have the link at the end of the presentation so you can have that direct access to take that survey.
Thanks.
And tell all your friends. Okay, bye.
3 options for you to provide comments. So this is, you know, early on in the process, there's a lot of opportunity for input coming up. A lot of decisions to be made in the future. So right now we're really in information gathering stage and would like to hear your honest opinions. So I believe the Mentimeter page should be active, and please feel free to comment on there. I don't know to share anything here in this breakout room.
I'm not seeing anything on, this is Steph Stackhouse, and I'm sorry if my camera is off, but I don't see anything. Yeah, I don't see anything in the Mentimeter. Is anyone else seeing something there, like a question prompt that you would like us to weigh in on, or?
Ben might be pulling that up right now. I believe the first question is just going to be, how do you feel about parking downtown, or what is your experience with parking downtown? What would you like to share about parking downtown? I believe that's the first prompt.
So I can share on that. So I am a downtown business owner. I own a yoga and fitness studio downtown. And so I think one of the challenges is just the use case of people's need for accessing downtown and how that varies. So in my scenario, we're offering 65 classes a week, and they're mostly about an hour long. And so people generally will come and take a class, and they might go, get a coffee or go to lunch after. They might do some shopping after, or they might be limited with the amount of time that they have, and they're coming to take a class for an hour and then headed back. So I would say we tend to have a kind of a quick turn in terms of the people that come through. And we have, just for context, about 900 people that come to our studio a week. So, parking is a challenge for them. It's something that I hear quite a bit about, the rising cost of parking, the fact that they have to pay after 6 p.m., which is sort of a recent addition. And so far, the conversation has seemed that, yes, a lot of them bike and walk. A lot of our students do, if that's feasible for them. And a lot of them come from outside the area. They don't live in San Luis Obispo. So it's not really feasible to take a bus and go take class and then head back, because you're looking at something, you're getting away for an hour or so of your day to take a class, and that turns into 2+ hours to do something like that. So it's a challenge. So I'm always very involved in these conversations to just sort of be the voice of people that are using parking in that scenario, that use case sort of. And we've done things like putting lots of bike racks and things around our studio and encouraging people to bike. But again, we have people that come from all over the county.
Steph, question for you. Sorry, this is Stephen.
Hi, Stephen.
What percentage of the clients that you have parking garages versus attempt street parking?
Yeah, so we're located down near the corner. We're between Broad and Napomo. So we're sort of on I guess it's we're on Higuera Street, sort of down near Napomo. And so parking, we do have some students that park in the garages, but not many, because it just adds time. And it's kind of funny, right? Like, people are coming to exercise, move their body, and yet they want to be able to park like right there, but I think it's more a function of time than it's not an unwillingness to walk. It's just a function of time. They're getting off work, they're trying to make a class, they want to get something that's close by. And the garages are, the closest one is, well, they're kind of equidistant, I would say. So it's about, 5-minute walk, 5 to 6 minute walk. By the time you go and drive and find a spot in the garage and then make your way out, it probably turns into an additional 10-15 minutes. So not unreasonable.
5 or 6 minute walk is what, maybe 2 blocks, 2.5 blocks?
Well, yeah, I mean, the closest garage to us is a good 6-7 blocks away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're really on kind of the other side of town currently. But we're excited for the Cultural Parking District garage, because that is right behind us. So addresses that issue come 2026 when it's done.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? I mean, I'm at your disposal for 25 minutes. You can ask me questions, you can share amongst yourselves, whatever. And we'd love your input, of course, and thank you for continuing to provide input. But I'm here to make this the best use of your time. What can I address anything, or I'm not going to have all the answers, but how can I be of service?
This is Stephen. I am currently a visitor to San Luis Obispo. I'm looking at places to move to, and SLO is very high on my list. I can't speak, and nor do I have a lot of questions related to parking. It sounds to me like SLO has invested in parking garages, which I always believe is a good idea, because then that helps support the businesses that the garages that are nearby the garages. So I would always encourage more parking structures and less street parking. Having said that, the reason why I wanted to take a serious look at San Luis Obispo specifically is because of its non-traditional infrastructure that I see going in. And I'm talking about primarily, I'm talking about the protected bike lanes. But anything that makes the streets more accessible and more stress-free for anyone that's not in a car. I grew up in Southern California, 10 million people in the LA area, and literally everyone has to use a car because there's no other viable alternatives for most of the travel. It's simply too far away, the streets are too broad, the traffic's too fast, there's too much of a fear for personal safety. And that's what's different here, is just that sort of approach. SLO is on the leading edge of providing opportunities for its citizens, both in town and outside of town, to be able to come in and enjoy an environment that isn't car-centric, isn't necessarily car-centric. And that's what I'm looking for. So I know that you have to balance that off with the economics. And if the economics require people to be able to drive in and park, otherwise you end up with a barren downtown, then I think the garages are the best way to do things. But what I would not want to see is that as the city boundaries expand and more of these housing developments are coming online, what I wouldn't want to see is that the folks that live downtown then begin to suffer because the folks that are out of town use the roads as a through route in order to get to something else. All that does is create more congestion downtown and creates a less livable downtown. Street parking to me is usually not a major qualifier for shopping. For me, it's, can I walk to something? Can I walk to the market? Can I bike to a clothing store? Can I go see a movie by something other than having to drive over there and park? Only when it isn't available to me more locally will I then go someplace else. And so the example would be that if I become a downtown resident, my first choice will be to shop in all of the downtown area. And only when I don't have the option will I go someplace like, Madonna or South on Broad or something like that. And those are important. Don't take that the wrong way. Those are important things. But if we're looking at creating a good example, I think a leading example in California of a way to bring sort of city density and livability into the same area, then that's what I'm all for.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Mark's iPad. Mark, do you have, I see your hands raised. Do you have a comment? Or is that an affirmation? Okay. We're about halfway through our breakout time, and I thank you for your comments on parking. I think now we want to open it up to non-parking, non-personal vehicle modes of travel, whether that's walking, biking, taking the bus, you know, scooters, what have you. Any thoughts, comments, opinions? Would anyone like to share about non-parking travel options?
I have a question. Sorry to interrupt if anyone wants to get in here. The question itself is pretty short, and that would be if you have any data, research results from population centers that have already gone through this type of work, where they decided to create a greater set of options for moving around town, and how that impacted people's attitudes and how that also impacted the economies in those areas.
Great question, great point. There is research available on that type of behavior. Parking is tricky because parking is not only moving around town, but it actually has a pretty substantial impact on the buildings we actually build and construct in the built environment around us. So, you know, parking has a physical space that it occupies on a on street, a block face, or what have you. And then, like you said, there's also the circulation aspect of it. You know, that is research that is out there. For this project specifically, I don't know if we're going to get to that level of detail, but as far as, you know, investigating those behaviors, we do have some additional tools. And I saw some comments in the chat previously about getting bike and ped counts downtown and comparing that to car travel behavior, or maybe some other, you know, mode splits or mode choices, travel behavior options. We might have some opportunity to do that for this project for San Luis Obispo. There's a couple of different tools we can do to tease out some of that information. You know, of course, with the pandemic and everything, there's uncertainty, you know, and there's, you know, just behavior patterns of people's behavior the last couple of years has been atypical. So, you know, I think generally we want to promote a healthy commercial, residential, just a healthy community, you know, just a healthy community. And so what are part of the elements that go into that? And certainly transportation choices, parking and others can be a big driver for that. Does that answer your question?
It does in a way. Let me give you an example though. If I were on the city council, or if I were a concerned citizen here living here, it would help me understand any particular direction that SLO takes if there's other data to back up previous experience in other population centers. Go ahead.
Typically, I mean, there's all kinds of variance on definition on how we agree on those types of terms or preferences. But, you know, if you're just looking visually, you know, a one-story building is probably the first incremental step you could take in a development, you know, then a 2 or 3-story building, and then you have, you know, 5/1, 6/1s, and high rises. So, you know, just visually looking in a downtown, you can see that how those development impacts have occurred. I'm not saying we want high rises everywhere.
But that's an excellent point. Is your study taking into account possible zoning changes, multi-use buildings or higher density?
Zoning, I don't know. Parking and transportation municipal code language, potentially. We might touch on zoning here. I don't think we're not redoing your plan or, you know, downtown plan or any of those specific area plans or anything like that. So we're really limited to parking access management options.
But are you using the projections for zoning, for density over, say, the next 10 years as a basis for that?
So the city has, applicants, permits for what potentially is some development coming online. So yes, that is being factored to some degree. Generally speaking, I would say that we want parking and transportation policies that help businesses thrive, help people move around, help age in place, if there's, missing middle housing and all those other impacts that we're facing, not just in SLO, but statewide and nationwide in some places. So I think I don't know how much you want me to opine here, but happy to answer any more questions if you have them.
Steph, as a business owner downtown, would you have an opinion on whether or not you wanted to see greater density within, say, a half a mile diameter of the city core? Do you think that would be an advantage or a disadvantage?
I think it would be an advantage. I think it would also help with some of the housing, issues and transportate all of this. I think if we had more density in the downtown, a lot of the projects coming into downtown are for multi-use, multi-level buildings, and I think that's a good thing. I think that I recently attended a conference actually in Reno, Nevada, about the West Coast Urban District Forum. So it was a bunch of downtown associations that put on a show, and hearing about different areas, especially through the pandemic and their resiliency through that. One of the things that was common was the density and the multi-use happening in a downtown. So like one of the examples they gave was downtown LA, where you have a large number of residents compared to an area like Union Square in San Francisco, right? Not really any residents there. And Union Square is still really struggling to recover. And it will be forever impacted. It will take years and years for it to recover. But downtown LA, really the residents were what kept those businesses going throughout the pandemic, because they were at home, they were shopping right downstairs, right down the block. And so I take that story and share that story a lot because I think it makes a lot of sense.
That's my personal experience as well. Did they describe any changes to traffic flow or parking issues because of that density, or was that not an issue?
No, it didn't. They didn't really get into those pieces, and I do think that is something that has to be kind of worked through. I think that there are things around, particularly some of the new construction that will come in with residences where there's parking allowances, there's fees that they have to provide, parking in lieu fees, that will result in some additional vehicles in the parking garages. So the fact that we do have another garage that is coming around will help to mitigate the increased demand that comes from those residents coming in. So I think that we've already got the infrastructure planned to deal with that in our case.
Great. For a while, I worked in Washington, D.C., and the state of Virginia decided to build a remarkably dense area in Arlington County, Virginia, which is a sort of a suburb of Washington, D.C. The density went approximately 6 to 15 times more dense than it had been at the time. But the predecessor to their project design was that they didn't want to increase either parking issues or traffic flow issues on surface streets. And the way that they mitigated that was through these alternative, but basically what we've just discussed, which is you increase the density and people tend to want to shop and dine and be entertained locally, it's much easier for them than to have to get into a car and drive. The other thing was that they improved all the alternative forms of transportation. You know, they improved the buses, they improved subway, they made the sidewalks truthfully broader than the streets. They created, they took entire lanes and made bike lanes out of them. The same sorts of things now. And what they found after all of that, even though they increased population by almost a factor of 10, they didn't see any increases in traffic congestion or parking issues. Which, and again, it was because they were thinking about these other alternatives. Interestingly, I spent the summer up in British Columbia and I saw the exact same things happening in both Victoria and Vancouver City. Vancouver is actually closing off entire sections of bridges across the water there. And it's not dramatically impacting vehicle flow, mostly because by the time they get to another part of the city and they have stoplights, they're just sitting dead on the road anyway. And if they had 3 lanes where they're sitting versus 2 lanes where they're sitting, they were still sitting, but it didn't negatively impact traffic flow, and all of their neighborhoods became more livable. It was amazing to see. Even, I mean, Vancouver is the densest population center in Canada, and yet it's a very livable city and drawing more people daily because it's such a success.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. Do you mind if I sneak in a quick question? I'm Austin with KSBY here. So we mentioned, or Jonathan, your consulting firm mentioned earlier that kind of the goal of the study was to balance out parking demand downtown because areas like Higuera, you know, almost all parking spaces are taken, but side streets are open spaces. Has there been any discussion or any ideas as to how exactly you would balance out that parking demand to areas downtown that there are normally available spaces at?
We really only had very preliminary conversations about that. And, you know, just a reminder, nothing has been determined at this time. We're still very much in the information gathering stage, but typically, or what other cities have done to solve that equation is demand-based pricing. And demand-based pricing doesn't mean real-time dynamic pricing, and demand-based pricing doesn't mean prices will always go up. So if you're doing a, you know, like we shared earlier, the parking occupancy maps on different street block faces at different times of the day, it's possible to lower the cost of parking at the perimeter on those block faces that are, you know, underparked, whatever percentage you want to put that at, 50% occupancy, 60% occupancy, whatever your threshold is. Our target occupancy is 85%, or at least one available parking spot per block. And the right price to charge is the lowest hourly rate that will create that availability. So that if someone's looking for parking downtown, they can drive to the destination, you know, their yoga studio for their class and be able to park on that block or across the street or fairly approximate. Now there's a fee for that convenience, but that fee covers the cost of providing the service and maintaining the roads. And SLO is also already in the advantageous position of having an enterprise fund. So the services generated by parking can go to fund other improvements like bike lanes, like trees that add shade. You know, Ventura did a public Wi-Fi program. You know, there are options like that. And really what we're looking to do is just make the best use of space in downtown and elsewhere based on the input of the community. So thank you. Looks like we're being called out of the breakout room, and I'll see you, in the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I haven't heard any complaints from them. So for them, I think it works out fine. I like that idea too of, like, you know, just a few more like bike parking plazas. That seems like a pretty cool, you know, idea, just to, you know, kind of increase the bike, you know, riders, because I feel if that's pretty encouraged, it might alleviate sometimes the bus loads, because you know, especially on Thursday nights, The buses are a little crowded, just a tad bit, but not. Oh yeah.
Well, Ben, I'll give you some tips. One, we have the bike kitchen here over on the corner of Morrow Street and Pacific, and they do sell bikes at a pretty reduced rate. So if you're looking to get a new bike, I definitely recommend stopping over there. I've taken my bike over there several times to get repaired, so I know that's a great place to go, and the guys will treat you good over there. I do know that Transit is working on getting their staff back up to pre-pandemic levels so they can expand the services that they offer. I don't know if that will increase the overall total number of buses that go on to Cal Poly, especially on Thursday evening, but they are trying to get the trolley back up in the near future. So that hopefully will be running on Thursdays, and that's a great way to get downtown from the Grand and Monterey intersection. So hopefully that's coming for you.
Oh, cool. That sounds awesome. And what's the name of that bike place again? I'm gonna write it down.
It's the Bike Kitchen, and they're right on the corner of Pacific Street and Morrow in downtown. Okay. Right behind the post
very
office.
Familiar. Okay, wait. I think I know what that is.
Yeah. Great group of people that work over there.
Awesome.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on biking, either your own experiences or experiences of people you know, anything that the city could do to encourage more biking?
I'll just say, I think I had this conversation with the consultant in a pre-interview, and I talk to you all the time, Gavin. So I really am here mostly to listen. But I do think that there is an influx of e-bike ridership that's going to be really hitting us in probably the next 4 to 5 years, and we need to be prepared for that. So I think the buffered bike lanes are great. The protected bike lanes are better. I think we're building infrastructure now to build sort of what the environment is going to look like soon. And it's just going to be painful to get through the next couple of years. E-bikes aren't replacing bikes, they're replacing cars in people's lives. And I am a total card-carrying member of that club because I have an e-bike now and I barely drive my car. So I'm like fully living this lifestyle. So I'm in favor of it, but we're still a very car-centric community. And so there's a lot of emotionality that goes along with that piece of it.
So I'll add, we are trying to accommodate for the future here. One of the things we're incorporating into the Cultural Arts District parking structure is a bike cage in there. It'll primarily be for contract or for citizens that work or live in the downtown that want to store their bike there. We are planning EV charging for the bikes there. So that's one of the things that we've asked the vendor to incorporate into their design element for that area. So our hope is that we can build the infrastructure now and we have the opportunity to accommodate that need. We've kind of been behind the ball with EV charging for vehicles. We did do the expansion in the Mark Street parking structure a number of years ago, but we only added the level 2 chargers there. So we are in the process of dealing with the consultant now and an outside vendor to add level 3 chargers. So our goal is to have the availability to meet our needs of our community that are moving to electric vehicles and electric bikes.
Gavin, I found notes yesterday from a parking study session that was at City Council it was November 13th, 2018. I totally just found these notes by accident. So this was when Tim Bokum was running the parking program. And there were some really cool pieces of data in there. Was that parking meters started in 1948. 1988 is when the Palm 1 structure opened. 1990 is when the Marsh Street structure opened. And then 2006 was when Palm 2 opened. So I don't know if that is something that you could put in the plan, but I just thought that was really interesting. And then I wrote this number down and I circled it and underlined it. But I had the total number of parking spots on November 13th in 2018 was 2,869. And I'm just so curious what that number is now, given parklets and delivery zones and bike lanes and all of those things. You don't have to answer me right now, but I'm just bringing that up.
No, we'll include that in the report, what our parking inventory is when we come back in February. It has been reduced. With the paving project last summer, we lost about 25 or 30 spaces in the outlying areas where we had paid parking. We do anticipate losing another 10 parking stalls with the summer's paving project in the core. And that's going to be, hugely impactful to us. But, the way some of the parking was previously designed and placed around the city, it doesn't meet today's standard for line of sight. And so they're trying to correct those issues now. Parklets, we'll see where that lands and how many parking stalls are absorbed by those. Initial projections for it are going to be about 1/3 of what's out there right now. I think we have 48 parking stalls that are occupied by parklets in July. So that number's definitely changed since then. I know a number of parklets have been removed since July. So we are getting space back, which is great. We'll see if new businesses apply for those permits and if that takes up additional parking that we have right now.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts about parking, access, biking, walking?
Gotta bring back rollerblading.
I could be wrong, but I'm not sure. I used to attend the Mission Church on Sundays, and I could be wrong, but I think you charge now to park on Palm Street at 9 in the morning on Sundays?
We do not. So parking on Sundays begins at 1 p.m.
At 1 p.m. Okay, I maybe misread that. I thought it was both Saturday and Sunday that parking is, because that was always free before.
Yeah, no, on street on Sundays does not begin until 1 p.m. It is something that council did ask us to take a look at. It's making our paid parking hours uniform across all 7 days of the week. There's some benefit for us offering free parking or reduced parking on Sundays to encourage downtown activity. That is one of the things we'll be looking at when we go back to council at the end of the fiscal year in June. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to bolster our downtown business activity and visits to downtown on Sundays. And, we have to work with our downtown community to figure out what that looks like.
Okay, yeah, I don't attend Mission anymore, so yeah. Another thing is, I tend to be part of the older population here, and I do live fairly close to the downtown, and that was one reason I purchased the home that I did. I'm in the Anholm district, so I can walk downtown. But I know a lot of my friends that are my age or older aren't able to walk that distance, even though it's only 6 or so blocks. And they aren't going to, at 75 or plus, they aren't going to be riding bike or scooters or e-bikes. So I know there has been concern by some of my friends that it's getting more and more expensive to park downtown. And there's some concern by them about that and cutting back on the number of times that they are able to afford to go downtown, say to a movie or dinner or whatever.
Yeah, I'll say to that, we're trying to encourage responsible parking behavior in our parking structures and on street. The on street spaces are intended to turn over and be for more limited time use. So if people are, doing longer dinings or going to an event downtown, either like Slow Rep or the museum or to a concert, we do encourage them to park in the structures. We're always going to try to keep that rate in the structures more affordable to encourage people to park in them. So that is a great option. Additionally, I know there was some chats earlier about people with ADA placards and that type of thing. If you have a placard or plate, you can park in any metered on-street space without payment for, without having to pay for or without having to obey the timeline frame that's out there. So if it's 2 hour zone, you can park there. Beyond that, you just have to obey the no parking restrictions that are in place. So most of downtown has a no overnight parking, so we can do the street sweeping. So,
okay, good to know. My friends will be interested in hearing that.
And the paving project this summer is adding a lot of ADA parking throughout the core.
Good, yeah.
I have more to say if you're interested.
Yes, go ahead, Bettina.
I'm really curious about some of the data that was shared just before we went into our breakout rooms about that sort of 85% threshold of usage in parking. And I'm curious because I'm definitely in support of the new parking structure that's going in. I think that's a really valuable project. But looking at that data makes me wonder how we cannot be meeting the capacity and yet we're building this structure to provide more capacity. And so I'm wondering if you could kind of help me puzzle through that logic from an advocacy point of view.
Yeah, so with regard to that, I think what the data shows is that there's a lot of space in the outlying areas that's really underutilized. A lot of our 10-hour meters are not properly utilized, and we don't really have a way to incentivize people to get out to those areas. The core areas are heavily impacted, whether it was Saturday or Thursday throughout the day. Those spaces are occupied pretty much everywhere from Napomo all the way up to Santa Rosa, and between Mill and Palm area all the way over to Pacific. So those spaces stay really active, and they do have a high turnover rate. So we're getting the activity in those areas that we want. Parking structures, we're around 65, 70% occupancy in there, which is lower than we had expected based on what we have seen. So, Thursday night's pretty much the only night we fill there. There's some peak times on the weekend or Thursday, Friday, and Saturday that it gets relatively full, but not to the capacity levels that we need. I would stress that one of the things with the new parking structure that's important is that we have to plan for 5 and 10 years out. Our numbers right now from our reports look exactly the same, if not similar or higher than they were pre-pandemic. Our revenues, excluding the expansion of hours and rate increases, are higher than they were pre-pandemic. So we're getting the utilization that was pre-pandemic levels. So we do need to plan for that eventuality that we're going to exceed what we currently have. We do have to figure out some creative ways to address utilizing our outlying areas. I think it's probably going to be more employee parking at reduced rates in those areas. We have to figure out what we're going to do with the 10-hour meter permits. Bettina, as you and I have discussed, us going gateless provides us a more wealth of permit options that we're able to offer to our downtown employees. And I think that that's where we can maximize and capitalize on the usage of those outlying areas and create the space in the core for our visitors to downtown.
Great. As usual, thorough, compelling answer, Gavin. I really appreciate it. I do think the other aspect to be considered, which I don't see terribly well represented here, is there are different seasons in the downtown, right? We have the early morning, we have the afternoon, we have the weekends, we have Thursday night, which is its own animal. And then we have the nightlife. And I was glad to see that Robin Wolf is here as a downtown restaurant owner, but I think some of the other restaurant owners probably aren't able to attend right now because they're in the middle of dinner service. And I do want to be sure that they're getting their voices heard, both because of the 9 p.m. enforcement hour that people have a lot of opinions about, but also just because there's safety issues about getting people out to the perimeter, employees, all of that.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely try to make every opportunity to reach out to them. We have the survey. There's some open-ended questions there where they can comment and provide additional feedback for us. Additionally, I'm always available for questions from our downtown business community and any of our residents throughout the community or tourists that visit the area. So we try to address everything as best we can, know that there's an impact and to our late night constituents, the employees that work downtown and our patrons. We're trying to figure out more solutions for that. I know PD is working on some of the safety related elements for downtown. We are extending our public safety inside the parking structures with bringing on Securitas beginning of October to police our parking structures. Additionally, we have some parking enforcement officers where we're going to be expanding their hours of service later into the night, not only to patrol the residential areas, but also to provide an extra level presence in the downtown community when they have to issue safety violations. They won't be enforcing paid parking violations, but they will be looking at safety violations and provide that extra city presence in the downtown.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts or ideas for things that the city could do to improve?
Kathy, why did you choose to come tonight?
A neighbor of mine told me about the meeting, and I just was curious, and I had a couple questions, so I thought I would attend and see what was going on.
Do you feel like you've had a chance to get those questions answered yet? How long have you lived in SLO?
9 years.
Oh, nice. Do you like it?
I love it.
Trick question, right?
Yeah. No, moved from the valley, so I love it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Are you from the valley too, Ben?
No, I'm from up north, past Salinas, and like I'm in another mission town, so I'm mission hopping.
Are you a first year, second year, third year?
I'm a second year. Oh, my camera's not even on. I thought my camera was on this whole time. There we go. Yeah, no, I'm a second year. Yeah.
It was such a peaceful backdrop. I was actually feeling very soothed hearing your voice and looking at the green trees.
I do like that picture. Is everybody's nights going well?
Yeah, no complaints. It's Wednesday and it's great weather again, so.
Oh, yeah. We got Cal Poly currently has a game against UCSB in soccer. I've been keeping up on it. My roommates are listening to it on like the radio, and they're like yelling every time something happens.
I forgot that was tonight. You're missing the taco night, so.
And it was tough because I was like an orientation leader, and I was telling all my freshmen, I was like, all right guys, try not to throw tortillas because they get really mad. Last year they had like one of the coach just started pointing at people, and like those people were just getting removed. So I was trying to go, just don't do it, just don't do it.
Are we supposed to be doing anything in the Menti screen?
And there were just those last two questions. If you answered your thoughts about parking operations and then general thoughts on walking, biking, and transit access, the same themes that we're talking about here, you could talk about there, and then we'll have it recorded. I'm also taking notes on our discussion here, but you could answer there too. I see, Bettina, you posted in the main chat about a bike share program. Have you visited other cities that you thought did that well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, right? So most of the cities that have bike share programs through City Bike or other corporately funded projects, they have more commuter type situations where somebody will ride the bus into a certain area and then they'll need to go what's called the final mile. We don't really have that in SLO because if you ride the bus in, the transit center is like probably 2 or 3 blocks from where you need to go. That's helped us, I believe, fight against some of the scooter drops that have been tried to happen in San Luis Obispo. We've successfully kind of not had that happen because those can be very cluttering, even though they are effective methods of transportation. The bike programs are really a mixed bag. As I said, I have a friend who's the CEO of the Downtown Colorado Springs partnership, and they launched a program that has been successful, but really like 11 different kinds of headaches because of the maintenance that's required for it. So they basically have to employ a fleet of bike mechanics in order to keep everything operational and so the program can keep going. So what sometimes can happen is that a company will get really excited about it. They'll invest a bunch of money in it to purchase the bikes, but there won't be any costs for ongoing operations. So it ends up being kind of more of a burden than a relief. The other thing is that many cities, frankly, don't have as much bike infrastructure as San Luis Obispo. So people might be a little reticent about getting onto shared bike programs because they don't feel safe and they don't want to go out into busy city streets. So I don't think it would be appropriate necessarily for us to take that on. That's not a project that I see like Downtown Slow as the nonprofit who partners with the city doing that. But I could see potentially if there were some like park and ride option on the outskirts of town doing something like that, or maybe having a shuttle. I'm not sure. It's not a fully baked idea. It's cookie dough, not a cookie.
Kathy, Benjamin, do either of you have any thoughts on like possible solutions for those final few blocks or like the final mile problem?
I don't think so.
No, I really don't. I just find the downtown fairly small enough that, you know, you can get around pretty much anywhere from where the buses can drop the kids off.
We would love to see the trolley come back. We do.
Yeah.
Trolley.
That'd be cool.
I think right now they're trying to bring it back on a temporary basis for larger days. You know, that's been one of Austin, the transit manager's goals. You know, it's been a struggle getting all their bus lines routes back up to pre-pandemic levels. So they're still struggling with drivers. I think they're down about 9 drivers right now overall, but they're trying to staff those routes that definitely need attention. And then, you know, the nice to have trolley is something that they want to do. So.
Totally. I saw a couple that was visiting from Norway and they were standing under a trolley line. Like, oh, when does the trolley come? And I said, it's not coming, dear.
We should probably look at taking down those signs.
But they're so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's great opportunity there with the trolley to service more of our community, both at both ends of the downtown area. So I think it's a great program. I like the way it's worked in the past, and I hope it comes back just because it's the easy way to get people into downtown without having a huge impact.
I wonder if it could even go out toward the Anholm and maybe pick up some of those people that you were talking about.
Yeah, you know, well, I think one of the things with the expansion of the EV buses, you know, if they have smaller buses, you know, shorter, quicker routes that they can run that are more impactful to the community around. So hopefully that's a solution, but the trolley is too. So I'd like to see that come back.
I have a quick question. Where do I find these meetings when they're posted? Are they on the city website?
They'll be posted on the city YouTube channel. So if you go to the clerk's office, we post them there. This video will probably be up beginning of next week. If IT can help us tomorrow, we'll try to get it up tomorrow.
All right. Cool.
All right, it looks like we're ready to go back to the main room. So it looks like some of the other groups have already returned. Leave our breakout and report back.
Thank you all.